Hi, welcome to another edition. Very much looking forward to this next interview because it's with someone who I've seen interviewed on television and radio and podcast or two. And I said, I've got to get that woman on Green TV. Jamie Beck Alexander. She is the director of Project Drawdown Labs. Now, some of you, not all of you, have heard of Project Drawdown. They're an organization, at least they were based in Marin County, where I am from. Paul Hawken was running it for many years, and it's grown so much. Jonathan Foley, I see as part of it. So excited to see that you're part of it. And whenever I talk about solutions, people, yes, mostly, sort of green leaning friends mention Project Drawdown. You guys really came up with a template for what must happen, what we can do. And I can't remember how many categories there were, but now you have Project Drawdown Labs, which I imagine is that conduit, that piece to take it from just, the book and all the research that's done to the public. And that's, of course, what Green TV aims to be. I think you're the world's leading resource for climate solutions. We like to think, or we're planning to be the world's leading media resource for climate solutions. And thank you for all your great work there.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Betsy. Great to be here.
So we have heard that it's code red for humanity. We have seen, one after another of extreme weather events, fires, floods, tornadoes, derechos, fire nados, new words invented. And each time, whole neighborhoods, if not towns, are devastated. There really is an education need. And I think that's part of what you're trying to do, is reach people who are working in some big company like Amazon or Cisco, and teach people who work there, because they seem to be the drivers, how they can make change in their organization. And is that your focus, in fact? And tell us when Drawdown Labs actually launched.
Yeah, thank you so much. We're broader Project Drawdown really exists in order to, exactly as you just said, Betsy, to research and then model out and then kind of communicate and lift up for the world what those solutions to climate change are, because we know what's causing climate change. We know what's causing this planetary instability. And, based on our research, we know how to address it. We have those solutions at our fingertips. But we had not, since we launched Project Drawdown in 2017, we were hoping to see more uptake of those solutions, more policy put in place to enable the scaling of those solutions, more investment in them, more behavior change to bring those solutions about into the world. And we just weren't seeing it. And so we launched Drawdown Labs 2 years ago now, really with the goal of identifying, okay, we have all these solutions, but what are the big leverage points we have to scale them? So we have the what, but now we need to figure out the how.
We have the
why, right. And the why it matters, right. And who are these people that are bringing them into the world? So Drawdown Labs is really our effort to work with some of those, not all, but some of those leverage points. So we work with large corporations and smaller kind of climate focused startups. We work with investors, and then we work with philanthropies. And those are sort of our three key audiences, as we need to change corporate behavior and kind of influence the leverage, resources, and scale that they have to be able to move away from those practices that are, just incompatible with the future that we need, just straight up incompatible. We just can't keep doing them, and try to get them to pivot toward climate solutions and show them, what the return on investment would be for investing in those climate solutions, what the greenhouse gas reduction potential is of each of them. And then with investors and philanthropies, we really look at helping them rapidly, put their capital toward the most impactful climate solutions, like what we need to do right now. Because we need a lot of, capital to be able to accelerate the deployment of solar panels and to change the infrastructure of our cities. So we have more walkable cities and building retrofits, and all the things we need to do requires money.
Things we needed to do, last year, the year before,
right.
But now we're up against the wall and need to do everything faster, smarter. So how's it going, reaching out to corporations?
I've been working with corporations for a while now in different capacities, and I have really seen a real shift. I've seen, from early on, I'd say maybe 5 or 6 years ago when I started kind of working in this corporate climate nexus space. It was, it was a little bit of like, you had to sort of gently broach the topic and make the business case and make sure it was, in the corporation's language and messaging. And now I will say that has changed. I think, as you said, the places where we're seeing, in the Bay Area, all of those corporations in Silicon Valley are now seeing the wildfires on their doorstep, and they're seeing the effects of that on their employee retention. Employees were out sick. The employees couldn't come to work when the air quality was, hazardous because of wildfires. So I think we're seeing employees start to, organize internally and start to say, our company isn't moving quickly enough. And so how can we come together and support the company in moving faster, use our own skills and job functions to help the company move faster, and try to hold them accountable, to these climate goals that they're setting. So I really do think there's been a big shift. Investors have helped shift that conversation. You're seeing more investor engagement on climate, more investors kind of saying, they want to see the companies that they're in their portfolios. They want to see them, getting to aligning with the Paris Agreement or better. And so I think we're seeing sort of in local communities also. So we have many stakeholders, I think, now kind of pressuring companies to move faster. So that's employees, investors, local communities, and business executives themselves, I think, are starting to get it as well. But it's hard. It's hard when they have they have to show a return on investment, quarterly returns. It's a hard thing to square.
Well, I hate to jump into the belly of the beast so quickly, but I don't want to forget to ask you, is there a way to have a capitalistic, culture and still preserve a climate for our kids and grandkids? And I'm on Clubhouse sometimes listening to rooms, and there was a sustainable fashion room talking about, can luxury brands ever really be sustainable, in light of just what they stand for? And there's like, that conversation should be happening everywhere. It's always been said that, well, environmentalists, they just want to, have us stop, selling stuff, and we can't do that. That's our economy is based on that. But we do sell and buy a lot of crap that is not needed, not necessary for a happy life, and that is, causing pollution and greenhouse gas emissions in China and across the world. We have the biggest footprint as Americans, per capita. So how do we square that? How do we, not lose what we need, good food, good water, home, shelter, furniture, but stop with the excessive, lavish, ever bigger mansions and, cars that may be not electric, more gas guzzling, all those things that have fueled our economy, quite frankly. That's the part I don't really have a good answer for, but you might. You probably do.
This is the question that I lose sleep over. I honestly toss and turn thinking about that question since I started working, in the belly of the beast. And it's really, I really don't know. And it's something that I do, when I'm having sort of my strategy conversations with other people in this space that I really, whose minds I really turn to with these questions. I think we all are struggling with this. Do we have time? No, of course we cannot continue to exist in a world where of such excess and based on such, overconsumption. But is there a way to completely remake our economic model in the amount of time that we have to be able to make, to get our emissions down to where they need to be? And I don't know that that's possible. I don't know that it's possible to completely remake, our economic model. I do, however, think that there are, I think that the most exciting and I think the most impactful thing that will change capitalism and corporations quickly enough are the people inside those companies who are anxious, worried, stressed, being impacted, like at their wits' end, feeling like my company's part of the problem. I think if capitalism is going to survive, it's going to be because employees inside their companies have said that enough is enough, like, and holding their companies accountable. And I think that will hopefully lead to a more systemic change, like, kind of a move away from these companies, reporting on their quarterly returns and having, and not being able to think about the longer term. And I also, I think we do have, there's this like tension in the climate community around individual action and systemic change. And I feel like now there's this it's almost like taboo to talk about individual action. It's as though it's like, how dare you say that I should change anything about my life? And I'm like, hello, we are the most privileged people in the world. How are we not looking at our own lives right now?
It's not either or, individuals or corporations. It's both. It's everything. Everybody.
Exactly. We are part of this system. I can't tell you how many conversations at like an executive level within, these inside corporations where they say, the demand is as high as ever for these products. Like, are we just supposed to, and so I think there should be a demand side, I think we should be aggregating our collective enough, we're not going to purchase this anymore. We're going to stop. And there should be a recognition within companies. I love your example of in the fashion industry. I think there should be a reckoning inside these companies with, the stuff that we're producing, is it even compatible anymore? Like, we don't have the carbon budget for this. So we just need to stop or shift full stop toward just building things that are part of the climate solution. I think that's an alternative that we could explore, and we haven't really.
I bet it drives you crazy like it does me when the price of gas goes down, the sale of SUVs goes up. Some mothers in Marin County in 2002, we started Don't Be Fueled, a grassroots campaign, Mothers for Clean and Safe Vehicles. We just got into Iraq for oil, even though that wasn't in the headlines. And these giant, SUVs driving around Mill Valley, Tiburon, that neighborhood, but everywhere across America, especially affluent areas, these, wasteful vehicles to carry their, 50-pound child around. And, we were trying to educate mothers that this is not the safest way to proceed. And still, so it blows my mind when in 2022, 20 years after we started that campaign, we were obviously way ahead of our time. It's still, when the price of gas goes down, big automobiles are selling well. Isn't part of the missing piece that connection, educating the public, the media piece? And I have to say, in all the wonderful things that were listed in the original most impactful areas showing where climate change is what's causing it, food waste and educating women in impoverished countries, all those great things. I asked Paul Hawken at a conference, but you're missing one thing, and that's the media, mainstream media. If they covered climate and all our other eco challenges like they did COVID, we would have many more people alarmed. Green TV is part of the solution, we hope. That's why it's so important, right? Because too much of the population either is not being educated, doesn't want to be. Sure, there's always going to be those who don't want to know and cover their eyes and ears. Don't waste time on them.
I completely agree. And that is what why what you're doing is so important. We absolutely, that's one of the reasons that Project Drawdown, it's a great point that we should talk about that more as a solution. But I think one of the reasons we do exist as an organization is to say, there is not enough focus on amplifying all the things that we can do. But you're absolutely right that the other side of the coin is we need people to be aware that this is happening, be aware of the stakes, and that this is all the marbles that we're talking about. This isn't just like 1 degree temperature change and warmer winters. Like this is a really becoming an existential, issue, and making that real for different people, making it real for farmers and fishermen, and here in Duluth for like hunters who are much more in tune with the way the forests are changing. Like connecting with people and the things that they love, I think is really a missed opportunity. And I hope that I think that's starting to change. And I think the other thing, in addition to the media is demonstrating, those of us who are fully, sort of on the most activated and engaged side.
Those of us who know too much and don't sleep enough. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yes. Well, I say we need to spread the guilt so other people can sleep a little less and we can catch up.
Even everyone out. I mean, I think there is a way that I am speaking for myself. Like I need to demonstrate it more in my behavior, like demonstrating that it is an emergency. And what does that mean for my own life, behavior, consumption? And I think if more of us did that, I think if more of the people who were super activated were also not just, being activists and voting and talking about it, but also embodying that in our, in our lives and our decisions and our consumption, I think that would show people that like, oh, this is serious.
And I think more and more people are doing that. Certainly people who work in this space should be showing it with their actions. But I also don't think we should let perfect be the enemy of the good. Like some people said, well, Betsy, you're not a vegan. How can you call yourself an environmentalist? Well, I'm not, but I compost, recycle, have been doing shows on, environmental news and views you can use for 25 years on my own time and dime. Yes, I still fly a lot less since the pandemic, and we will not be planning international vacations anymore, even after the pandemic, because of climate change. And now we have this zero emission sailboat. All our vacations will be on that with solar panels. But the point is, you can criticize everybody, but if every American did a 20th of what those of us who know too much do, we'd be in much better shape. It's not to pass it off. Let's get back to solutions. It's the fossil fuel industry, and it is, of course, but first of all of us are using fossil fuels till we can transition our energy system more completely. And there's so many other factors. I, of course, put some fault on mainstream media that's not taking this seriously enough.
First, I think the fossil fuel, there are a lot of sort of hypocrisies within our own movement, of course, because this is such a deeply human and deep issue. But the issue about, fossil fuels make up the biggest share of our global emissions. That is absolutely true. We absolutely need to transition that, job number one, as quickly as possible. But it is not by any means the only thing we need to do. Even if we did that, we'd still have a massive challenge on our hands. Our global, food and agriculture and land use sector. So the way we grow food, ship food, eat food, food waste, that is equivalent with electricity as the biggest, as the equivalent tied as the biggest emitting sector. So we have a massive opportunity to shift to regenerative agriculture, different types of grazing for cows, addressing our food waste. A third of the world's food is never eaten. Which we have, there's so many other things we can do. So just to say, yes, we should all do all we can to pressure the fossil fuel industry to cut off our any ways that we're inadvertently investing in fossil fuels through our 401ks or our own investments, getting, transitioning to renewable energy if we can, activism, pressuring, yes, we should absolutely do all those things. And there are, about 50 other climate solutions that we need to scale as well, including, transportation is now the biggest emitting sector in the US. There's the way we're heating and cooling our buildings, and there are a lot of other things. And the fact that the food and agriculture sector is roughly equivalent with electricity with our energy production, fossil fuel sector, roughly equivalent in terms of the amount of fossil fuels that they're putting into the atmosphere every year. That, that should tell us that there's more work to do. And that's not to say take pressure off of fossil fuels, but it's to say there are more things that we can do here. And that's exciting. There are opportunities for farmers to get involved, opportunities for grocery stores to get involved, people at home addressing their food waste, new food waste startups. There are, indigenous rights, because that helps protect our forests from deforestation. It just brings in so many more people when you think of it as a bigger issue that more of us can engage in.
I'm going to give you a little real world example, not to keep you up any more than you already are, but we don't stay in hotels very often, but we did in Florida a couple of days before and after the sailboat business started. And it drives me nuts when I go into a hotel room and all the lights, we're checking in, all the lights are off and on, and they have the air conditioning blasting. Even in January when it's 60, it's cool. It was cool in Miami. They had the air conditioning set at 65. So that's all the rooms. They didn't know if we're going to check in at 1 p.m. or 10 p.m., and I've seen that more and more. And I just want to cry because it's like, really, don't they know there's a climate crisis, or they'll have a fire burning in the lobby in the middle of July, a gas fireplace for ambiance, and it's just still happening. I didn't see any sign of recycling except at the Miami airport in several weeks of traveling around the Miami Fort Lauderdale area. That's just a little snippet, but it just, my gosh, really, 26 years after I started Trash Talk, there's no recycling in Florida. Now I'm told that there is residential pickup in some areas. I don't know if that's widespread, but there's no sign publicly that I could see. So that's just a reminder that there is so much work to do. And yet what you said is absolutely true. There are so many solutions. And I say, just start to do some of these things once you know what you know and be part of the solution. And you feel so much better immediately and then it grows from there. And doesn't feel like sacrifice. It feels like a fun game to me to conserve. Look where we can conserve. So I say, put on the green glasses. And that's what I want to get out there, that people giving up, just how can you, was there a memo that said we're giving up on our kids and grandkids' future? I missed that one. Failure is not an option, right?
Yeah. Yeah. That's so deep. And the best, that just makes me feel like, God, we're not even trying, there's so many.
I don't mean to be buzzkill. It's just a little reality check, the world, get out of the bubble.
That's the easy stuff in the wealthiest places in the world. We're not even trying, which it makes it like, what if we did try all the plastic
that we had to throw away in our hotel room. We had a little kitchenette. It was like, oh my God. And we couldn't compost, which, I have a visceral reaction when I have to throw food away. That's what got me started with Trash Talk. So much to do and so little time, right?
Exactly. One of the best ways I've heard kind of articulated for the different ways we can engage is, thinking about like the ripples in a pool of water. So there's your individual action. And I think it was Dr. Leah Stokes from UC Berkeley who articulated this. But so there's individual action that you can take. And then there's, what can you do in your community? Can you help your apartment building get solar panels? Can you have a little bit of a broader impact beyond your own purse? Can you get composting bins for your whole apartment building? Then there's, I would add, then there's workplace. How can you engage in your workplace and help your bigger institution, your company, or your, wherever you work? Can you help them accelerate their climate ambition? And then, the broadest would be the kind of policy engagement. So how are you engaging in, activism, voting, getting involved in policy? And I think I kind of like that, because then you don't have to choose one. You can have, you can make a decision, and then, we have solar panels in our house, and whatever we don't use is like sent back to the grid, so then it's helping the rest of our, is helping green our electrical grid in some very small way. But there's, I think the individual is very much related to the broader system. And so I just like thinking of it in that way. We can take action in all of those areas.
I like to say something when I see something. So I've got this little meme. If you see something, save something. So when I see that, I have to say something. Why are you putting the room on 65 when it's a cool January day? I don't know how many hours it's been blasting. We walk in and it's like walking into a deep freeze in a restaurant. And they usually thank me if I say it politely, which I almost always do. And they say, I don't know, we've just sort of always done it that way. That's the mentality that needs to change. Haven't you heard we have a climate crisis? But I can't get around the world fast enough with my big mouth. Everybody's got to be ambassadors.
Absolutely. I love that. I think that's so, I feel like that question that you asked, who knows what outcomes will come from that? Yeah. Like that person may have gone back to their team meeting, or, their meeting at that hotel, and said, someone raised a guest raised a really important question to me today, and I want to bring this back to leadership. And maybe that changed things massively, maybe at that one hotel, or maybe their whole chain of hotels. So I love that. I think that's such a powerful, voice that we have. Sometimes I think about, that the concept of it's the overview effect, which is, when astronauts go to outer space and they have this moment of looking back on Earth and seeing Earth from
William
afar.
Shatner.
Yes, yes. And yes, exactly. And how it just, and Carl Sagan, I remember like in his Cosmos series, like talked about this, like it's the moment when your whole perspective changes. You go from thinking of every little thing as just, you just have a total mindset shift. Yeah. And I sort of feel like that's what we all need. Like, we're not talking about, we're talking about like massive change on a massive scale. And sometimes I think we need something like that overview effect to sort of jolt us awake and say, what if we completely and sometimes I wish that some of the companies I work with could go through this exercise. Like, what if you thought about not just reducing your emissions gradually over time, but what if you thought about, like, if you really deeply understood the consequences that we're talking about here, like, you would make, massive changes to, you may say, we just can't do this anymore. We just have to, like, full stop, just shut down or transition into making, solar panels, or there's no telling the massive changes that I think would happen if people really understood what, the scale and scope of what we're talking about.
All companies were like Patagonia, they give their employees 3 weeks off to go do environmental projects, and they, don't want you to buy their products. They want you to keep the same one over and over again. And they've been using recycled plastic from bottles, in their, sweatshirts, whatever, for decades, since I've been aware of it. But they're always the exception to the rule. Many more need to be like that. And as far as going into space, like when William Shatner became our oldest, newest climate activist, I just said, well, gee, maybe these billionaires should send everybody up to space, to see this. But obviously that's neither environmentally friendly nor possible. But, and that's how I feel it's going to happen. Like, so many people who are not doing their part, people in powerful positions, head of corporations, government, politicians, they're going to see it someday. But by the time they do, and we're almost there, it's too late. Like, where were you? And that's why I feel like we need to make the media piece, the education piece, so loud you can't ignore it. And we're really hoping Green TV can be that home for people who are curious, are concerned. Why is the weather changing? And without any political concerns, just come and get the facts straight, because we interview the solutionaries. We're focused on solutions, because that's where people need to know where they can go. They don't have time to watch all the documentaries, and there's so many great ones out there, but we will have those too on our website. And the books and all that. Just turn this on while you're cooking dinner. You don't even have to watch us. And I really curate, because I've been doing this so long, the best and the brightest, not only the most important issues as I see it, or we see it, but people like you who are the most articulate, compassionate, reasonable, but yet you don't skirt around the urgency. And I just love what you're doing for Project Drawdown. And perhaps we can do something together to get the pieces all to fit, so we can get people to wake up and smell the carbon.
Yes. Oh, I love that. I mean, I think what you're doing is so important. And I'm just thinking of I don't know if you saw Don't Look Up.
How could I not? Everyone's talking about it. Yeah.
It makes me feel like that, that movie just shed a light on the failure of our media to do that. And you are the antidote to that.
Well, I was a victim of that, because when I went to all these news executives, program executives, they said, oh, we don't think so, and they never had a good reason. And then they would stop responding to my emails, because there is no good reason. If a humanitarian crisis, existential crisis of our lifetimes, code red for humanity, and there's not one program anywhere except maybe on Earth Day on what we're going to do to get out of this planetary pickle.
You're absolutely right. I think what you're doing.
When I saw that movie, it was like, yeah, I'm Kate, and there's a lot of us. Yeah. We're all going to die. Wake up, people. And then there's still so much frivolity and, I call it distraction TV. If you watch the morning shows, it's all about makeovers and deals and steals. And sounds like,
yeah, I think so too. And I wonder, I know people personally who, once they've gone through, a lot of people in the Bay Area going through a particularly horrible wildfire season, or, for people in Germany or something who have gone through, who just had that horrific wildfire season and floods that they've never before seen. I think there is almost, and I don't want to say that we need to go through something like this to be activated, but I think I almost feel like there's almost something like a wormhole or like a portal that you go through when you actually go from, kind of thinking of this as a superficial issue, or just climate change as one isolated issue.
Someone else's problems out there.
Yeah, or someone else's problem. Right. And then to like fast forwarding into like, oh wait, no, this is every single thing that I know and love. This is life as I know it. Then like, I feel like there is this process of like this, sort of like going through this portal. And then you're like, oh, well, everything needs to completely transform and fast. And I wish that there was a way of like simulating that experience for people to really truly be able to grasp what we're facing.
If I had $1 for everyone who said to me over the last 2 decades, oh, Betsy, no one's going to listen to you until we have some disasters, I go, where do I start? Which ones do you want to talk about? And it's, connecting those dots that should be screamingly obvious now. We have friends who lost their homes. Another one, ranch up in Calistoga from the sequence of wildfires every year. And we moved to Texas, and we didn't move because of the fires, but some people have left California because of that. But then we moved to Texas, and guess what happened a year ago? We had, last February, Snowmageddon, record freeze and hundreds of people dying. And like, there's no escape. It's coming for all of us. It's just a matter of what form is it going to be in. And it is somewhat random in terms of where and how it hits, but it's not at all random in terms of the cause.
Right. So well said. I mean, and we did leave California because of the wildfires, and we came to Minnesota, and last summer we had the worst. There were wildfires in Superior National Park that nobody in Minnesota had ever seen before. The air quality was as bad as it had been during the 2018 Camp Fire in the Bay Area. So it's just, it was almost like, it felt like it was the universe's way of saying like, we don't stop this. You don't run away from this until you address the source.
Last month, fires in Colorado, horrific fires. Yeah. And because it's, the land is drier, and because the winds are stronger. I grew up in the Bay Area. We never had 80-mile-an-hour winds. And that's part of what fueled these flames from down power lines. And that's what people don't understand. And I think people lose their lives because they think fires move slowly. Not now, not anymore. And they need to take precautions if they knew, what was coming.
We haven't talked about the political
Build that better mansion. How could we not?
Yes, I was just going to say, that is definitely something that we're working on right now at Drawdown Labs, looking at, how can the companies that we work with be bolder in their support for the climate provisions in the Build Back Better Act, at the very least, because they're going to rely on those federal investments in that package to be able to meet their climate targets. So if companies are actually genuine about their like net zero by 2040 targets, then they are going to need those policies and investments in place, that their trade associations are sort of demolishing at the moment. But so that's something we're working on, is trying to get companies to be bolder in their support for bold climate policy.
And the fact that one man, seemingly Joe Manchin, can hold up progress and harm our children and grandchildren's, unborn children's futures, all of ours, and that he's getting away with it, and it's dragging into months now. And then certain party wants to make Biden look bad, and they will do that at any cost to the future and the planet and their own children. And so he looks weak when he's trying to pass these. There's a lot of criticism of Biden from both sides. Democrats, progressives tend to think he's not doing enough. Well, he's not able to do much with another party. Not that it's a secret which one is blocking and not making no votes for it, on their side. So how do you sleep with that? Because it's hard this deep into it, that we're still seeing such idiocy. Let's just say, call it what it is. It's not even myopia. It's like right there, it's unforgivable, isn't it?
It is. And it's, and the part that keeps me up at night is that, exactly as you just said, that, that kind of power rests with one individual or a handful of individuals is completely bonkers. Like it's
Individuals who don't
impossible.
believe in science, who refuse to.
Yes, I mean, imagine telling our kids that, or imagine telling our grandkids that someday, that it was this one person, or this one CEO, or this one fossil fuel executive that just didn't get it. And the power, I mean, to me, the power of kind of the multitudes of all of us coming together and and bringing this world about that we need is the antidote to that. But in these existing structures, it's just unforgivable that we have let that kind of power rest with a handful of people. And I really hope I don't know how that will change, or what's underway to kind of change who leads and what leadership looks like. And I
want to talk about the pandemic's impact for a minute. We all saw the pictures of goats in the streets, and nature coming back now that humans are staying home, and that seemed very encouraging. In the end, the emissions went right back up. But I was hoping, and still am, that because this global crisis that literally stopped things in their tracks overnight, the whole world changed, behavior change, we did see action, just the sobriety needed to deal with this pandemic. Like, do you think we're learning from this? But what scares me is I see so many people just going, oh, it's over. Sky is falling, and people can't wear masks and get vaccinated. How are we going to solve climate change? But I just can't go there.
I know. Early on in the pandemic, I was really hopeful that we would, I think early on we did really see people coming together across even the political divides and staying home. And, it's kind of, I think we all were like, oh, wow, this is something that's affecting all of us.
It's going to change everything forever. That's how.
Yeah. And it affected, it was like a health, we knew that it could affect us personally as well as societally.
Yeah. Well, we're burning up the rainforest. We've got a respiratory deadly illness, right, circulating the planet.
Right.
So if we don't wake up now and get off our gases, I don't know. I'm not very optimistic, but this is the moment that we need to make our push, right?
This is the moment, especially when, our supply chains are breaking down.
Everything's breaking down. Everything's breaking down.
Right. Like, to me, I sometimes think about, well, okay, our supply chains are breaking down. We don't need to get, something in 2 days from China that we click a button to get. Like, instead of saying, oh, how do we fix this to go back to the convenience that we had? Why don't we just say, let's adapt to the fact that we may not be able to have that kind of convenience and luxury anymore, and figure out how we can have more fulfilling lives and more, more community by having what we need around us. And, just looking, shopping locally, growing our own, I think there's a resilience and adaptation and mitigation that we could all be doing right now, adjusting to what our new reality is. And while we plan to have, to create systems that are not so extractive. I still have hope that there are, that could be a longer term outcome. But yeah, so far the signs have not been great.
And you have several young children, is that right?
I have two young kids. Yeah.
What do you think when you tuck them in at night? I mean, I have a 27-year-old daughter who's engaged to be married and hope to have at least one grandchild, but it will not happen without my having such mixed feelings about their future. And anyone who's a parent should be doing everything they can.
It's so hard. I definitely, especially during like wildfire season and in California, I would just be like sobbing, tucking them in at night, it is very, very hard.
It's heartbreaking. And we just have to channel that heartbreak and be emotional, be personal. I think, just putting out numbers and being too scientific has clearly not work. So we're just about out of our time. I really appreciate your valuable time so much in your comments. And you just have a beautiful way of speaking what needs to be said in a very calm, nice way. Sometimes I'm not so calm, but I am a straight talker, for better or worse. The saddest thing to me is, like, as the world gets more stressful and dark and our screens, always occupying so much of our day and night, nature is where we find solace. That is what, the science proves it. Your Mind on Water, is a book that's been written, Jay Wallace, that's what's going to cure us and ail us. And as we are going down these dark, distraction rabbit holes or whatever, we are losing the very thing that is the most precious, and that is our planet and the things that are not replaceable. And while we buy crap, watch crap, whatever excuses there are for not dealing with it, we're every day we're losing. And one other thing I want you to repeat, I heard you say in one of the interviews, is every little bit does matter, like every single thing. Like, you can't just, I'm only one person, or what does it matter? China and India, they're going to pollute. It really, every little bit of carbon does matter, and it adds up, but only if we get the mainstream on board, and it can't just be in the fringes, and it shouldn't be. Sure, you agree?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I completely agree. And yeah, sometimes I wish that carbon were or that greenhouse gases were a visible thing. So you could actually see that every bit does matter. Every bit does, from, from an idling car or a smokestack, like it accumulates up there. And so,
when I walk into that hotel, and the air conditioning is blasting when it so doesn't have to be, and we have to turn the heat on to make it palatable. I see those, fossil fuel energy plants pumping, carbon and the black smoke, and that's what I see. That's why I can't.
Yeah, you can't not
get everybody
see it
to visualize that. We'll be in good shape. So I'll leave you with this last question. What can people do if they're listening and they're convinced now that they should be doing more, can be doing more, whether it's where they work, where they pray, where they take their kids to school, starting in their home for sure, but it can't be just recycling at all. It needs to go out from there.
Absolutely. So what I always recommend is looking, coming from Project Drawdown, which we do kind of aggregate all of the biggest solutions to climate change. I always recommend, like, just look at that list of things. There are things there for, farmers and teachers and doctors and, builders, huge opportunities for people in construction and, the building sector. There are so many things, in addition to the individual action that you can take in your own lives. There are ways to bring in your personality and your passion and interest into this, to actually, like, put those to work to help build the world we need. So I always see that our Drawdown framework as, like, what tickles you when you look at it, what makes you feel excited to contribute to? Because I think in the end, we all need to be able to, this isn't about just the kind of not getting a straw when you go to McDonald's. It's also about, what do I want my legacy to be in this? Like, how do I want to contribute positively to this? And I think when you see it through a solutions perspective, like, oh, there are lots of really exciting ways that I can actually proactively contribute in addition to doing those things.
It feels so good instantaneously, even just
feels so good. Yes.
Yeah. And I encourage people to speak up, and I also encourage people to compost if they can. Food is a terrible thing to waste when so many people are starving, not just out there, but in our country, in our neighborhoods, especially with the economic crisis, and just the methane from landfills. When you can compost and use it in your soil, it's a no-brainer. And once you do it, you can't not do it. You really,
right.
Yeah,
you really can. And if you have the ability and the means to make change in your own life, like, you should do that. You should do that. That's my take on it, at least. I think if we all just pass the luck, then
drive the most fuel efficient car you can. See if you can get solar panels. You can, rent them now, lease them. It doesn't have to cost a lot. And that's just the beginning. But speak up to your representatives. Don't vote for anybody who doesn't accept science and believe in climate change. Those are just a few of my favorites, but we got to go beyond that. And I'd love to have you back, because I really didn't get to half my questions. Wanted to talk more about just what you do with corporations and with some small percentage of corporations really being responsible for so much of our greenhouse gases.
70%, yeah.
I'd love to hear about how many of those you're able to work with at Project Drawdown, but I don't want to take up too much of your precious time. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you, Betsy. It was such a pleasure to be with you today. And I really appreciate what you're doing and think it's absolutely critical to what we need to see in the world. So
likewise. So maybe we can team up and add that media piece to your list of solutions, because I really do believe that is the lever that could move a lot forward. So I'll follow up
absolutely
to have that conversation. Thanks so much, and say hello to Paul Hawken for me.
I will. Thank you, Betsy.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.